night, when I was tired and couldn't fall asleep, but also couldn't do anything productive with my time, I decided to watch the new Lord of the Rings prequel, War of the Rohirrim. As someone who's watched the original trilogy twice, I have thoughts. This movie was originally developed to keep New Line Cinema, the studio that made Lord of the Rings, from losing the adaptation rights to J.R.R. Tolkien's original novels. And in order to keep the spirit of the original trilogy alive, they brought in OG contributors to the films like Philip Boyens and director Peter Jackson as support. I guess there were discussions of making an animated film in the Lord of the Rings universe for a while, and this is just what they landed on, given the time constraints that they had. To describe the plot without spoiling anything, the War of the Rohirrim details the story of Helm Hammerhand, the end of his rule in Rohan, and his daughter Hera. It details the end of the first lineage and the second lineage of rulers in Rohan, as well as expands upon pieces of world building that were otherwise left behind in the original books. I actually really like the fact that this movie was animated. When you're exploring a story that is essentially coming from nothing in the original books, it's giving you leeway to explore the story in a medium that hasn't really been done before. This story, in the way we see it, is new. The books only talk about the end of Helm's rule and the beginning of Freyalof's, nothing in between. Hera's character is built on pure fragments from the book. She didn't even have a name. And to essentially make your main character from scratch takes guts. I'm not the person to ask whether this animation was good. I mean, I thought it was great. I couldn't really judge a good animation from a bad animation, but I will say everything felt simple. With a series like this, you have to have a detail-oriented mind to make sure that everything is exactly how you want it. The goal with the animation team was to make everything seem as realistic as possible despite being animated, and while I can see that effort in certain points, everything else felt plain. To contrast these simplistic visuals, the sound design and the score were fantastic. Composer Stephen Gallagher took appropriate inspiration from Howard Shore, the composer of the original trilogy, and created a score that truly pays homage to such iconic pieces of music. There was also an original song made for the film that plays at the beginning. It's called The Rider. It's fine. Not really what I'm looking at when the score is as good as it is, if that makes sense. The film was critically well received overall, but it wasn't a smash hit. Critics essentially called this movie fine, saying it wasn't bad, but it lacked depth. One review even said it felt like a video game side quest, which is an interesting choice of words, and I do find it a little odd. I will also agree, however, that this movie did feel a bit hollow. 2 hours and 14 minutes spent in maybe 15 minutes of action can get kind of boring, especially when you don't have as much to look at or nearly as much information to take in. The world has already been built, the stage is set, there just wasn't much in between to fill it. The actors knew what they needed to do and they did it well, but it wasn't necessarily enough to keep me captivated for as long as this movie went on. After the first act, everything dragged. Bad. And it's hard for me to say that I loved this movie when I was struggling to pay attention to the second act with my teeny tiny attention span. Not to say I didn't like it, I did like it. I gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd. However, I didn't love it. So the moral here is that if we're going to make prequel films, if we're going to keep retelling the same story, you need to have something interesting to back it up. Devotion, time, and effort to telling a story and making it new and adding something fresh can only go so far when your main character doesn't even have a name in the source material that you're going with. The War of the Rohirrim is fun. It's worth the watch. But it's definitely not something I plan on watching again.